Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they moved through their pain, they realized that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesandgrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Welcome, everybody, to Heroes in Grief today. Thank you for joining Terri, Chaplin, and I today. So, Terri is my guest. She is a grief companion and educator, and she runs a lot of courses and things to help people who are helping people in grief coaching, life coaching, those type of things, and healing ways where she focuses on feeling, which is great because we're not here to fix people. We're here to help them wherever they are and to be able to navigate their losses. Terri, unfortunately, has experienced many losses through death in her life. But first of all, just want to welcome you, Terri. Thank you for being on Heroes in Grief today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Where are you located in the world?
I am just outside of Tampa, Florida. So beautiful weather, 365 days a year. I love it.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Well, welcome. And Terri, I'd love for you to tell your story, if you would, that involves why you got into this work and why you're doing what you're doing. And of course, about the beautiful people that are no longer in your life that I think most of us would say are still with us for sure. So I'd love to hear your story. And I think people gain things through these stories, and I'm told that again and again. So they can identify maybe with you where they wouldn't with another person. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, we'd love to hear it.
Not at all. And I completely agree with you. I really feel like, and that's why I show up every day and I talk about grief and I talk about my own personal experience because I feel like there's beauty in shared connections. And when I share my story and someone else connects with it, sometimes they don't feel so alone anymore because, as you know, grief can be very isolating. And it just helps to help others, offer them hope. And it's just something I'm deeply passionate about. So my experience with grief and loss really began with the loss of my first husband in 2005. He was sick for about 5 years. He had renal failure and had undergone 2 kidney transplants and was in the process of getting ready for a third because both of those had failed. And he wasn't supposed to die, though. That was never an Anything we talked
Mm.
about, he was doing dialysis 3 days a week. And then through complications, he never had an easy journey. His whole 5 years there was nothing easy about it. So he ended up passing away due to the renal failure. And at the time, we had a son. His name was Tyler. Tyler was 10 when his dad passed away. So it was just Tyler and I after that. And he struggled a lot. I didn't really focus on my own grief. And it wasn't until later that I realized I kind of put that on the back burner, trying to
Mm-hmm.
help Tyler and really just be there for him. And because he really had a hard time with it. And that taught me a lot about, showing others just how important it is to tend to our grief, because when we don't and we suffer multiple losses, we haven't yet processed, the first or the second or the third, those add up, and become cumulative grief. And it makes it harder for us to, work through those emotions. So in 2012, so 7 years after my husband passed away, Tyler, my son, was killed in a car accident.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you. Totally shattered my world. It wasn't anything that I ever could have anticipated. I kind of was a little aloof about it and just kind of thought, well, I had my big loss for life. And I didn't allow that first loss to really teach me the lessons that I needed to learn. And and so when Tyler passed away, it just hit me differently.
Mm.
And I started to see changes in myself almost immediately, and felt like I needed to do more with my life. Essentially, I needed to grow as a person. I needed to find a way to make sense or make meaning of my losses. And in doing so, in thinking that, I kept finding myself, when someone in our community had lost a child, I found myself on social media looking for the parents, especially the mom. I just wanted to reach out and say, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever feel like you are and you want someone to talk to, just know that I'm here and I'm willing and able to listen. And I made some really great friendships and relationships out of doing that. But it always like stuck with me. It was kind of nagging, saying, you need to do something else with your life. I was an outside sales rep for an energy company. I had done that for 29 and a half years. And I just decided one day, this isn't serving me any longer. I need to do something more. I need to honor my losses. And I quit my job and I just walked away cold turkey. Excuse me. And it's been the most beautiful, transition in my life, the biggest, learning experience. I found a lady online that I connected with who was certifying others to do this work as a grief coach. Um, I learned a lot from her about how to do that, how to best support people, what we really need. And that, coupled with my own experience, knowing what I needed and what I didn't find, what I didn't have, helped me come up with I offer private one-on-one grief support through my Healing Hearts Pathways program. Um, and that's where I find probably the most beautiful connections with people, because I'm really able to give them my dedicated time and hold space for their grief, because the work that I do, it's just about companioning someone, sitting with them in their grief, giving them a safe space to be able to share what's on their heart, because it takes a lot of courage to be honest about what's inside of us when we're grieving a loss. And all too often, because of all of the, judgments from society and all of the myths out there, we feel like we have to hide. We feel like we can't really speak our truth because we're going to be seen as the Debbie Downer, or, people just don't want to hear it. we're afraid of what people will say back to us when they're trying to fix us or they're trying
Yep.
to appease us. And so oftentimes we think it's easier just to not say anything. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I feel like we have to talk about what's inside of us. Our grief requires attention, and we have to be able to give it the attention that it's asking for. Because if we don't, it doesn't go away. We might think it does. We might keep ourselves busy and we might think, I'm doing a great job. I'm keeping busy and I'm not even feeling it, but it's still there. And as we all know, that the ebbs and flows of grief are real. It will come out at the most inopportune time or when you least expect it to come out. Um, and so I started doing that, supporting others through grief. And then last year or earlier this year, I held my first in-person grief retreat. And even though I've been doing this for 6 years, it was transformational in me moving forward in the work that I'm doing. I saw a huge need for community, and I witnessed this beautiful connection between the women who attended the retreat that I wasn't expecting. I'd never done anything like that in a group setting, and I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't expecting the beauty that came out of the connection that was formed, and the way that it wasn't just me holding space for these individual women. They were each holding space for each other. And we had fireside chats where everyone was genuinely interested in learning about the other person's loved one. We shared pictures and stories. Some had videos. It was just a really beautiful experience. And so I came away with that and decided that I needed to offer some sort of group support as well. And so I started doing that this year, and that's been absolutely amazing. The feedback that I've gotten from those who attend those sessions has been really wonderful. I incorporate a lot of, we start out every session pretty much with some heart focused breathing. I'm a heart math certified mentor. And so we do some heart focused breathing and guided visualizations. And then we just have time for reflection. Um,
Isn't
and
it great when the when those unexpected things just come out? Those are the best things, like that.
Most
That's
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how you say that to you're a companion. I think that breaks down a lot of walls immediately for people, and that's awesome. And you're so right again with grief that it'll get its attention somewhere in you, right?
Yeah.
If you don't give it the attention that it needs, it's going to come up and get its attention somehow. And those are three great things that just as you were talking there that came up that are so true and so applicable. And so that's awesome. So
Yeah.
these groups that you're doing now, you do them in person, or are you doing them online, or are these all retreat type things, or what are you
Um,
talking about there?
the groups are all virtually online. They're nothing that I offer in person. I have a lot of people spread throughout the United States. I even have some clients, in other countries. So virtually is how I offer those. I actually will be hosting some events with some local funeral homes coming up to around the holidays, healing through the holidays, which are just those are free events open to the community. You can find out about those on my social media pages, and they're open to for anyone to attend. There's no cost, and we'll just
Right.
really be same thing, just holding space for the grief that comes with the holidays, the family expectations, because a lot of times, especially as women, if we were the person that hosted holiday dinners and had all of the family over or were responsible for doing most of the cooking or whatever those expectations are, we might not be feeling up to it. That might not be something we feel like we're ready for, or we may be navigating um emotions around how to incorporate our loved one into the holiday because we don't want to forget about them. That's something everyone struggles with. I don't want to forget about, I don't want the world to forget about my loved one. I want to still whatever that looks like, setting a place for them at the table, everyone sharing a favorite memory or a story, whether it be around the holidays or not, are all things that we can do. But I know a lot of people struggle, with missing that person around, Thanksgiving and Christmas time. So um, we felt like this was a good time to be able to offer that space to anyone who might be feeling that and bring them together. And friendships come out of that too. It's just crazy how that happens. A lot of people shy away from coming into group settings. So when I'm advocating for it, I always put a disclosure out there, come as you are, share as much or as little as you want to. No one's required to talk. If you don't want to share, you don't have to share. But most of the time, everyone ends up sharing because it becomes such a safe, comfortable space and they just want to share. And out of that, they make connections with other people who, may be in close proximity to them or have shared a similar loss or experienced similar emotions. And, they connect outside of the group. So everyone that's in my group, I also have an online platform outside of social media where all of my courses and everything are housed in my Healing Hearts community. And there's a community space there too, very similar to like a Facebook group, if you will. And
Mhm.
you can go in at any time and ask questions, share what's on your heart, and get feedback and interaction from the other group members. So I found that to be a really good tool to have because, like, grief comes at midnight or 1 in the morning, and
Mhm.
there's no one available, but we want to get out whatever's on our heart, and it's just a safe space to be able to do that. So
Yeah, I want to get the website out to people right now. You can look at it as we're speaking here. It's myhealingheartscommunity.com. Myhealingheartscommunity.com. So you can go there and check things out as we're talking here. You said that too, that the witnessing of our grief. You talked about people being comfortable and said it many times. We can be around a lot of people and seemingly doing well and have a good support system around us, but we are on an island in our own grief, and so it's very important. And a lot of times we don't understand and we don't realize that we want to get that out to people and say, this is where I am, or this is what I'm feeling, and it's important for your grief to be witnessed. And one other question I wanted to ask you too is, you mentioned about the holidays and what kind of things you may incorporate to recognize your loved one during that time. As you were talking, I thought about, what about when, maybe in a practical sense, we can use it right here and say, what about when, for instance, myself, I'm very open about talking about Jeff and incorporating him in whatever's happening in our lives. And what if the others are uncomfortable with that? And what are some maybe easing ways of bringing them into that so that they're more comfortable with everything?
I think just it kind of the same way that I handle that going into a group setting is to, express, ask the person who's wanting to do something or to create a tradition or something with my family. I think I would express openly what's on my heart without, beating around the bush, just express what's on my heart, why I'm feeling that way and that I'd like to incorporate something and maybe have a family discussion and ask for feedback. Ask, how each of them are feeling. If there's something, do they think it's a good idea? If they do, ask them for ideas and make it kind of like a, a, a family thing where together you're coming up with what feels right for everyone. And maybe you settle on more than one thing. It doesn't have to be just one thing that you decide that you want to do. You may set a place setting at the table and reserve a chair for dad, or you may decide after dinner that everyone wants to have coffee or a drink and share a special Thanksgiving memory, or make a dish, whatever that person's favorite dish was, if they had a favorite pie or a favorite cake or whatever it may be. So I think if you include everyone in the conversation, um, and just make it conversational, but also let them know that, there's can be a disclaimer though that if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to participate, especially if it's something where it's open sharing, because a lot of times that's where you'll find more hesitancy is when someone doesn't want to share what's on their heart or they're not comfortable, because it does take a lot of courage to be able to speak up and be honest about what's inside of you. And a lot of people don't have the tools to do that, or
Hmm.
just don't
Yeah.
feel confident in themselves, or aren't comfortable enough with the other people around them, that they're able to
Yeah.
do
I
that.
think,
But
yeah, I think that, it's the adage kind of, where they're taking some ownership in that discussion, right? And so, when people do that, they feel more empowered to maybe participate in that too. So that would be great. Yeah. And,
yeah,
yep. Well, thanks for that. That's good. So you talked about the groups that you have and things. What else has come out of, all of this for you? I suppose, there's other surprises as well, right?
most definitely. One of the other things that I'm really passionate about, in addition to helping individuals, is I didn't have the best experience when it comes to the funeral planning process for either my first husband or my son.
Mm.
Um, and uh, it it always there were moments that always stuck with me and never sat well with me. But I just kind of wrote it off as, okay, this is what it is. It's a very transactional thing. These people were not there to support me. They were not there to console me in any way. It was a transaction. It was a business. I
Yeah.
went in, I sat at this big table. I sat at the same big table twice with the same man and
Right.
flipped through the same book. And the only thing that had changed maybe was the prices. And experienced the same upselling. And I didn't recognize it all then as, being unfavorable. But I knew it didn't feel well to me. And once I started doing this work and talking to other people who had experienced loss and grief, I found that it was um, more common than I had thought, and I found that some people had a beautiful experience. They had an experience where they felt warm and fuzzy and welcome. They were provided with grief resources. They had like aftercare where someone followed up with them. They got a card in the mail, or there were support groups offered, through the funeral home that they had worked with, and all of those things were. I was like, wow, like I wish I had had that. I wish I had had somebody just point me in the right direction, or give me something, or have it not feel so transactional. That's the part that always stuck with me. It just felt like a very cold process. There's a long story, but when it came to my son, the funeral director actually argued, for real argued with my husband and I, on the day that we took what we wanted my son to be buried in. It was our first meeting with him. He argued with us about what my son was wearing at the time of his accident. And we both know how regimented my son was. He was a very plain dresser. He had a very certain clothes type. He was only 17. I knew what was in his wardrobe and what wasn't. And it was a really unpleasant experience. There was,
Wow.
an unpleasant, like, stopping us the day of the funeral on our way exiting the funeral home following my son's body as the honor guard was carrying him out. And I got tapped on the shoulder to sign a document saying that they forgot to get me to sign it, saying that I would give them the life insurance policy when it came out. And
Yikes.
I'm like, not today. So in experiencing those things, I did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people. I started reaching out to funeral professionals, and finding so many are really eager to learn more about grief. They want to learn more about grief. So I started a group on LinkedIn for the funeral professionals who are looking for more grief literacy or kind of want to know, like, um, what to say or what not to say, or what's the best way to approach, someone's grief when they're in that space with them. Because I've had many of them say to me, like, I get so nervous around, like, that's what I'm around all day. But when it comes to the person who's crying and they're distraught or they're sad or they start talking to me about their emotions, I want to run and hide. I
Mhm.
don't know what to say. And so I kind of want to help change that and provide that information. So I've started working with a gentleman who runs a company that does CE, continuing education courses.
Mhm.
And I'll be working with him to teach a course on, providing compassionate care and also avoiding burnout and how not to let all those emotions affect you. And I've since developed a course that I have in the Healing Hearts community under grief literacy, for all professionals, and one that is specific to funeral professionals in really what grief is, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, how to best, offer compassionate care to the families that you're serving, and how to help yourself and make sure that you set boundaries so that you don't become burnt out or develop compassion fatigue and take on those emotions from other people. So I'm really excited about that. That's something new that I'm doing, but the feedback that I've gotten so far has been really positive. And
That's
I'm
great
finding
work.
more and more that there's a lot of people who want that information, and it's not something that they've learned otherwise. So I'm really excited about that.
Hello, friends. I just wanted to take a brief break here in the podcast to make you aware of a very exciting partnership that Heroes in Grief has just formed, and that is with Get Griefy Magazine. I'm going to let their founder and editor-in-chief, Kara Sanchez, tell you all about it.
Hey, Heroes in Grief listeners. Life after loss isn't easy, but it can be colorful and full of possibilities. Meet Get Griefy Magazine, a vibrant resource filled with inspiring stories of life after loss, expert advice, and voices from everyday grievers and thought leaders. Together, they're here to help guide you toward the side of life that's left to be lived fully and authentically. Dive into Get Griefy for free on issue or snag a print copy on Amazon. Connect with us on Instagram at Get Griefy Magazine or visit getgriefymagazine.com to explore, join our thriving small business collective, or discover advertising opportunities. Let's embrace life after loss, boldly and together.
And now back to our episode. Yeah, that's great work. And you know what? Although grief, there are many, you know, in grief, everybody experiences all these different things. Acute grief is different. And, even though a lot of the elements of grief are there, it's at a different level. And that's where those people are setting up a funeral. They're in the acute grief phase. And that's, you got to take into account their mental status at that point. You're in a different mental state because of grief brain and what's happening physiologically to you and everything else. And so, yeah, there's a lot of elements that they can be enlightened on, because if they take general grief courses, they are going to get some things from that. But a lot of the general grief courses are there for the ongoing grief that happens, and not so necessarily for that immediate grief phase that they're in. Yeah, it's horrible. I happen to have a good experience because Jeff was we held his services and he was buried out where my ex-wife excuse me, where my ex-wife lives. And it's a rural community, so it's very, everybody knows each other. The funeral director knew my ex-wife and everything, so it was different, and so it was very compassionate. And we did get a lot of those type of things that I think they had incorporated anyways, but the follow-up and
Uh-huh.
offerings and those type of things they did already have in place. So that's good. But yeah, it's hard to hear that the stories of the other side and what the poor people face and what you faced. That's difficult, very difficult.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and they're essentially the first person pretty much that comes in contact. So like you said, they are meeting us at the most vulnerable moment when a lot of times we're still in shock. And
yeah.
especially like I don't feel like anyone should be making decisions the day after they find out that their son is killed in a car accident. Like I don't feel like that's anything you need to be making decisions about, but you have to. And you have to. And when you said like the grief brain, some people don't even realize that's a thing. And some people
Hmm.
don't realize the real physical impacts that grief has on us and how it affects every fiber of our being. And when you're not sleeping, that affects everything about your life. And grief will keep you up at night. And the headaches that come from it, just the ache in the pit of your stomach that you can't eat because your stomach is upset the whole time, and just lack of focus. If you think about all of the things, that's what I always tell people, like journaling is underrated. Everyone's like, oh,
Hmm.
she's telling me to journal again. But
That's the way I am, but I
honestly,
hear so much about how good it is, but
yeah,
I
but
still
if
haven't
you
done it.
think about it, well, you're not alone. But either that or talking about it. If you have someone that you can talk to, because what I feel like is most important is unpacking all of the things that are in your head. Just think about when someone passes away, depending on their role in your life, if it's your spouse, a head of household, this person took care of everything. They were the breadwinner. Maybe you don't have a life insurance policy. Maybe you do. But thinking about, you have not only just lost this, huge part of your life, you're left with this huge void, but in your head, you're thinking about all of the things that will never be, all of the dreams that are never going to come true, all of the plans that will never come to fruition, all of the things that person will never be able to do, and because their life was cut short. But then you have all of the other stuff, the I gotta figure out how to pay the bills now. Like,
Yeah.
where is money gonna come from? How am I gonna pay for this funeral? That's a big one for people. That was a big one for me. I'm like, you're asking me to hand you over, you know, $13,000. Okay, I just found out that I needed to give this to you. Can I have a moment to think about it? And it's a lot. So when you think about all of the stuff that's going on in your head, it's no wonder people say that grief is overwhelming. It's no wonder that we experience anxiety alongside our grief, because it's a lot. So if you don't give that some place to go, and sometimes for me, and what I found with a lot of my clients is putting it on paper gives them something to look at. And then I tell them too, it's a great tool for reflection, 2 or 3 months from now, a year from now, to go back and look at what you wrote and see how far you've come. Because sometimes we're hard on ourselves and we don't even recognize that we've been doing the work, and we have had a transformation happen. And when we go back and can reflect on our own written words, we can actually see that. But beyond that, I feel like it gives us a place to unpack all of that that's in our head, and then break it down and organize it. But if you keep it in here, then that's what it's going to cause: overwhelm. It's going to cause anxiety. You're going to be worried about forgetting something. So that's why I'm a big advocate for it. And I say, like, but most people typically will roll their eyes, like, that's what you got for me, journaling? Like,
No, I know.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know very well. You're talking about all those things going on in your head, and I'm picturing papers just flying around in the wind, right? And
yeah,
every once in a while they stick to the wall. And so, and I know if I sit down and I write down what I'm going to do that day or whatever the case is, it's out of my mind, but it's in front of me, and I end up being more productive because of it. And it's simple. And it's the same thing with, journaling things and getting whatever, those ideas out of your mind, and then you get a bit more clarity so you can get to where you're going. And
Right.
yeah, so people discovering, and that's part of what you're doing, helping them discover in themselves whatever that may be for them. And it could be something, I don't know, kind of things I feature on here or whatever. It might not be. It might just be your progression in your family unit and with people, and whatever the case is, whatever, how that comes out to be. But right. So you can really guide them in that better if they can get some of that clouding out of there. Right.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's really the goal with it, or that's why I would, suggest that to
Yeah.
someone if they
I
have
need
that
to
going
do it.
on.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people have come on here and said it.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, hey, there's technology, right? You could dictate into your phone and, or something like that, right? If that works for you
Most
better,
definitely.
we have the ability to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah, got to take advantage.
Yeah. I saw you were part of a co-author in a book too. Is it an anthology? I didn't look too close at it. The book is called Unstoppable. And is that an anthology with several authors in there?
Yeah, it's 25, 24 other women, 25 including me. Really just telling our story of, not all of it's about physical loss or grief, but it's just telling a story of some adversity that we faced in life, how we came through that on the other side and are now doing things like this to help, change the world, to help impact the lives of others, to, bring about some sort of change, or just how we've overcome that and made meaning out of our lives to become unstoppable forces. So that was
Mm-hmm.
a really beautiful experience. It was a difficult experience.
Mm-hmm.
I I really I remember writing my chapter and finishing it, and I gave it to my husband to read. I was really proud of it. And I hadn't submitted it yet and gave it to him to read, and he gave it back and he was said, "Terri, I I'm sorry, but you have so much more emotion. I feel none of your emotions." He said, "I was with you. I'm remarried, and my
Yeah.
second husband was there when my they knew each other. We had gotten married before Tyler passed away, so he was there
Mm-hmm.
with me through that. And he said, I don't feel any of the emotions that I saw in you." And I came back into my office and I thought about it and I opened it up and I was looking at it. I was like, this is too hard. I can't paint that picture. I can't, it's going to put me right back there. But that's what I needed to do. And so I did it. And it was hard. I did it through tears, but I feel like, and I've had other people say, I really am proud of it because I feel like I took the reader's hand and they walked up to the casket with me for the first time seeing my son's
Mm.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel like I poured my emotions in, and I did my best to really paint a picture of what that experience was like, and then, how I was able to move through that, and how I feel like my son really had a hand in pressing me to learn more about life. And, I don't tend to share my own personal views often because I don't know what other people feel. But for the sake of this, I had no religious or spiritual beliefs. And something was nagging at me saying, there's something else you got to learn. There's something else you need to know. You got to figure out what this is. And I kept telling my husband, and he was like, "Well, do you think it is?" I was like, "I don't know." And I went to get my hair cut like a week after my son's accident, and my hairdresser started telling me a story about visiting a local medium who had told her things about her mom. Her mom had passed from cancer, had shared a really, really personal story with her that no one could have known except her mom and her. And I was like, there's no, I was not a believer at all. So I
Mm-hmm.
went home, I set up a fake email with a fake name, and my son's story, he was an intern at our local sheriff's department. So his passing was in a lot of the newspapers. There were a lot of articles written about how he flourished, because after he lost his dad, he had kind of just kept to himself, but he really found a place there where he felt comfortable and felt at home. And so there were a lot of articles written about him, like the becoming a butterfly. And I knew that anyone in our local area had read the stories because it was everywhere. It was on the national news. So I didn't want her to know who he was and have any knowledge, because I knew I needed to believe it with 100% certainty. So I set up an appointment. My husband and I went, and it changed the trajectory of my grief completely.
Wow.
She told me things about Tyler and about my relationship, and something that I had just, an incident between my husband and I, like the day before I went to go see her. She painted a picture of that for us. And she was even giggling when she was telling me what my son looked like in this incident. And everything was spot on. And I walked away from there that day knowing that he saw, like, I feel like I tell anybody, my son had the coolest funeral. Crazy as that may sound, the sheriff's department gave him a full honors funeral, even though he was 17 and a half. The sheriff deputized him at the funeral. He had the motorcycle police leading us to the cemetery. People were saluting him. It was just, he would have thought he was so cool. It was like a dream come true. And it was sad for me that he wasn't there to witness it. So then to find out that he was, and he did know, for me, that changed everything. It just changed everything, because I feel like I can talk to him. I can share things with him. He does show me signs that he's still around. He lets me know, hey, Mom, I'm right here when I need him the most, or I'm feeling a little sad about something. So that was a beautiful turning point for me. My journey with grief.
That's great. I love hearing that. And, you shared your experience with your husband about when you were writing. And so I want to make sure I get this right. He was saying that when he read that, it was different than what you were showing on your exterior. Like, that's where all your emotion is. And I didn't realize all that was in there. Is that the type of thing he was saying?
Yeah, well, he was saying that I wasn't digging deep enough. Like I was painting it like I was just telling a story, on a surface level story, like we tend to tell in grief, where we don't show our emotions, and if people look at us, we might act like we're okay. He was saying, like, you're not letting them see what really happened, how you really felt, what you were really going through. Like, you need to dig deep and let the reader see. Otherwise, it's not moving. It's like, this story is not moving me. It's not an honest depiction of what you went through. But I found it so hard to really open up and share what exactly I went through emotionally. But it was very unburdening, if you will, to get all of that out and to be honest about it. I could do it one time, and then lots of people got to read it. I didn't have to like tell it over and over and over. I just did it that one time and dug deep. But it helped me to be true to. I'm one of these people who tend to, and a lot of people are, I don't like attention. I tend to like not give enough value to myself or my feelings. Like I'm okay, and hide my grief, inwardly. I don't want people to think I want attention or I'm looking for something. So in telling my story, I feel like I was doing the same thing and just being very surface level about the experience, when
I
was so much more than that.
I was privileged to be part of an anthology as well and tell the story, and experienced similar things. It's tough. It's tough to go through it and write it all down and experience that all again and everything.
Yeah.
But I think it is important to get the impact of it across, because other people are feeling what you're feeling. And it's another connection point, where that's what I found in other people's stories too, where it's like, wow, yeah, I felt that, I've been there, and each time that kind of happens, it helps. It's kind of building those blocks up for you, that you can start walking up again, or moving forward again, and everything, yeah, just that.
Definitely.
Yeah, those things of connection. Ah, I didn't mean to dismiss or get past the point of the signs and everything. Anyone who listens here knows that that's a very prevalent thing in my podcast. And you know, I don't know if attraction is happening or what, but I'm a firm believer in all of that. I never intended for the podcast to always go that way, but it does. And
Yeah.
I think I understand there's people out there that may not have those things or don't believe in those things and everything, and that's all good. That's fine. But it just happens to keep happening and coming together. So I think there's some attraction happening there, or who knows? My belief is that it needs to get out to people. That's the way I look at it. So I guess that's why it's happening. I don't know, but
Right.
so do you? And I think I saw on your site where you take a holistic approach to when you're working with people, right?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, it involves, grief involves so much of our bodies, our minds. Like it affects every aspect of our life. So, yeah, and my approach is it's not cookie cutter. It's very specific to the individual. I found that even my own grief from, they say that, everyone grieves in their own way, but I feel like everyone grieves each individual loss in their own
Hmm.
way, because
Yep.
the way I lost my husband in 2005 and then my son in 2012. My sister just passed away in April. Um, my
Oh,
father passed away 2 years ago. I I did not process any of the four of those losses the same way, the emotions that came with it. And I think it has a lot to do with your relationship with that individual, what their role in your life was as far as how you grieve that loss. And, sometimes we experience guilt, with some that can really affect our journey, but with others, you may not experience that. So I take a very individual approach, and start out really by holding space and just listening, asking questions to get the other person to start talking, to share with me their story, to share with me the relationship that they had with this person. Um, and then really go from there. And I do different things. I do a lot of guided meditations. I love doing visualizations, and like, e- especially if they're wishing that something could have happened, or a situation would have happened a certain way. I love to do a guided visualization specific to them and take them back to that moment and walk them through kind of a do-over, if you will, or give them the opportunity to, or if they wish they could have one more moment,
a
with their,
revisit, right? A
yeah,
revisit.
like
Yeah.
a revisit. It did in our group session on Saturday. We did a guided visualization that took us into a like a memory room. It was just painted a beautiful picture of the sun shining through the window. This beautiful, safe, warm space, and in the center was a memory table, and there were things about their loved one, memories, and I went through some suggestions, and then asked their loved one to come and sit with them. And at the end, we talked about what was on your memory table. What were the things that you saw that you remember about them? Did you say anything when they sat with you, or did you just sit together? And doing things like that, it just like sometimes gives closure where they feel like they didn't have closure. They need closure, but it just depends on who I'm working with and what resonates with them, and what I feel like would best serve to support them on their journey.
Yeah, I'd encourage people out there too. You mentioned that it is an individualistic approach, and so anyone who's got a cookie cutter plan out there for you and your grief, I would move on from them pretty quickly. I
Yeah,
think, yeah, you want someone who's going to listen to you and see where you're at. And as I took a grief educator course, and some people are going into one-on-ones, and I thought about it, but that's not my forte so much. And I thought about that, and that came out where it's like, no, you let them dictate where that's going to go. So you have you have all the tools to bring, but it's not like, here's our lesson plan for grief. Here's what we're going to go through. I mean, they
right.
can be general subjects, but it's going to be tailored to where and what they are. So that's going to help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Terri, anything that kind of has been going on that's come out for you recently, or future things, or anything like that, or maybe just something we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention on here?
I think we've covered the gamut of everything I have going on. I'm excited for the trajectory of where my reach is going as far as into the funeral profession, and helping to
Mm,
just bring awareness and grief literacy to professionals, like all professionals, that when they encounter others with grief. Because sometimes one of the big things I like to talk about too is, just because someone looks okay doesn't mean they're okay. And
mhm,
being able to recognize, when someone may be experiencing grief, although they may not outwardly show it the way you would expect them to. So just because they're not crying uncontrollably, or crying, doesn't mean they're not grieving. It could still be in there. So I just encourage everyone. My biggest thing that I tell people is to, if you're experiencing grief, give it the attention that it needs. Allow yourself the space to just sit with your grief. And if that sounds scary and overwhelming, start with small amounts of time, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, to just sit with it. Let the thoughts come, let the emotions come, let the tears fall, let it pass through you. And sometimes I hear a Terri, that's exhausting. And it can be exhausting anytime we're experiencing emotions like that, but it's also necessary. You can't move forward, you can't move through your grief if you just keep ignoring it, or you just keep pushing it in the background. And I can't tell you how many times I ask people, what do you do to tend to your grief? And I hear, oh, I keep busy. Keeping
mhm.
busy is not tending to your grief. And
No.
I can't say that enough. It's not tending to your grief. Your grief requires attention, and you need to give it the attention that it requires.
Mm, very good words. Very good words. Yeah, as you were talking about helping the professionals, I was wondering if you sit an employee base down and you would ask them, in a general, before you start speaking to them, how many um, have experienced a grief event or are feeling that they are dealing with a grief event at this time? How many would raise their hands? And we know that everybody's going to deal with it unless they leave first. And so everyone needs to kind of have those tools in place for sure. So,
Definitely.
awesome. Terri Chaplin is our guest today, and you want to visit her site. It's called myhealingheartscommunity.com, and the link will be in the show notes, along with our social medias and everything too. Terri, keep up your fantastic work. I know that work with the funeral directors and things is going to be very fruitful for them and for you. And yeah, that's important to get those specifics down for them of what they're dealing with. And it's surprising to hear, maybe surprising, maybe not, to hear that they don't feel they're equipped the way that they need to be. We have therapists the same way, right?
I,
Unfortunately.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
have therapists that are my clients, and I'm always surprised. But I studied psychology in college and learned nothing about grief. So
Right. Right. And
yeah, it's
that's
just
that's
not.
that's unbelievable, but it's true. So. All right, Terri, thanks so much for coming on Heroes in Grief, and I look forward to seeing the great things that you got coming up and everything too.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.